evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock on the 13th of July, and it's the cabinet meeting this evening. Moving on to item 1, do we have any apologies for absence at all? I think we're all here. Item 2 is to approve the minutes from the last meeting found on page 5. Are there any comments or any amendments need to be made to that at all? No? Okay, I should sign, Ken, I should sign the official document this evening. Moving on to item 3, which is items of urgent business. Whilst it's not an item of urgent business, the briefing note on the financial outturn position only went out today. Obviously, with such late notice, that doesn't put members in the position to now to form any questions in relation to this. So, obviously, with both group leaders here this evening from non-administration groups, if there is a question you wish to ask, I'm more than happy for you to table that this evening in relation to this report. Moving on to item 4, which is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest in relation to any of the items on the agenda this evening? None. Moving on to item 5, which is my statement. First of all, I was only made aware of this just before the meeting. I understand that Councillor Allen has had a serious car accident. Obviously, a terrible thing to happen to anybody, and obviously we wish him a speedy recovery. Yeah. And then obviously, if there's anything we need to do from this end, feel free to ask. As I mentioned at the last cabinet meeting and since, the environment is one of our main priorities to get Thurrock back up and clean, so our residents actually can have pride in the place in which they live. We are facing obviously the many challenges that we had before, that fly tipping, littering, ensuring our open spaces and parks are well maintained. Residents would have seen there has been an improvement in this, slowly but surely. Obviously I need to pay tribute to all of our environmental team that really are pulling out the stops to make this happen. They are doing well. About 3 weeks ago I walked around the town centre in Grays with the Chief Executive. Neither of us were very impressed. I walked through the town centre this evening, and there's certainly an improvement. It's not where I would like to see it, but certainly much improved. And obviously, as you go through the agenda tonight, you'll notice that we are putting options forward for better enforcement. Obviously, it's much better to tackle the causes of littering and fly tipping rather than just dealing with the aftermath of clearing it up. Well, I am pleased to announce, obviously, as we move forward, the frequency of grass cutting will be increased. I've been to a number of the parks across the borough. Again, not particularly impressed when I saw them. A number of them have been tackled, certainly not all of them, but we are aiming to have all of our parks and open spaces well cut for the summer holidays as they are rapidly upon us. We'll also be increasing the frequency of grass cutting along all of the major routes. It's no good obviously just having our parks neat and tidy. When people come to see us, our front window is our major routes for anyone coming into the borough. The last thing we want is investors to turn away because it looks shabby. We'll also be cleaning up the council stretch of the A13 during the week beginning the 1st of August, and we'll continue to press Highways England for them to do their bit. Again, what we don't want to see is our bit looking all nice and clean and somebody else is bringing it back down. That's not fair on us, not fair on our residents. Tomorrow I'll be attending the official launch of the Thames Estuary Commission at their offices in Stratford. I've already attended a boat trip along the Thames from Tower Bridge along the waterfront. Those people that were on the craft with me included businesses and many of Lord Heseltine's commissioners. Very impressed. There's lots of things happening in London and all the businesses that sort of take the mile, etc., showing how wonderful they're doing in London. And then we hit Thurrock and it's a whole new world. The opportunity is just absolutely begging to be snapped up. And those that were on board were quite impressed with obviously some of the successes we've already had and can see the potential for a lot more. So I'm hoping that obviously the Thames Estuary Commission will start helping us to further develop not only the waterfront and our shoreline but also the rest of Thurrock. So I can't wait until we take Lord Heseltine down the A13 so he sees a little bit more than just that on the riverfront. With that now said, I shall move on to item 6, which is the financial outturn position report. Shane, if you'd like to do your report, and then at that point, if either Councillor Kent or Councillor Snell have a question, they can certainly put it forward.
Thank you, Chair. So introducing item number 6, the 2015-16 financial outturn position, everyone will probably rightly assume that this is a reflective report of the previous municipal year, which seeks to document the financial stewardship of the previous year. There's going to be a couple of reports tonight which are somewhat reflective. This is the financial reflection, and we'll be talking about performance reflection shortly with my colleague Councillor Stewart. So in short, the report is it's a lag report, so the data is from last year. I think the key point to make is that the budget was balanced at the end of the municipal year. That is despite some significant pressures that were unplanned, unforeseen, and obviously unwanted in some instances. So moving over to the second page of the report, there's a whole piece around the 2015-16 general fund position. It's a bit of a history lesson, a bit of sort of a rearview mirror look at what happened last year. Serco, we know what happened with Serco. We obviously, as the new administration, but while we was in opposition, we supported the previous administration chair in that piece of work, and obviously that is documented as an exceptional spend, but an exceptional spend well spent in the long term, I'd suggest. Furthermore, there's a whole piece around pensions, which is documented there within. And the red flag which continues over into 2016-17 is around the social services spend in children's. I know Councillor Little is already making good headway in identifying ways of reducing demand and applying the correct focus there. So in short, we ended up with an operational surplus of 2,960, and the recommendations here tonight are to effectively note the position at the end of the municipal year. At my request, the Section 151 officer, as I mentioned at full council, is undertaking a review of the general fund reserves amount. And why are we doing that? I think it's only proper that we have an elephant in the room conversation around what the reserve amount should be. It hasn't been reviewed in 6 years, and that's far too long in my view. And I'd like to make it very clear, Chair, that whether the recommendation be to reduce or increase the reserves amount, this administration will look at it pragmatically and take the correct view to make sure that this council, in the very unsteady times that we face, there's been a heck of a lot of announcements and news today, we need to be braced for a bit of a stormy ride, I think. So we will take a pragmatic view, and that will be announced in due course. So the particular recommendations, apart from obviously 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, one I really want to labour away on slightly, in section 1.1, that the general fund reserve were maintained at 8 million, and the section 151 officer will be reviewing the balance or the figure, and will come back to Cabinet and present a review of those total amounts, and we will take a view on it accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Head. Councillor Kent or Councillor Snell, do you have any questions at all? Thank you very much. Members, Councillor Hall, you have a question.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Head rightfully points out the financial pressures in children's services. Myself and Councillor Little, as the Cabinet Member for Child Social Care, have already been doing a lot of work reviewing the provision of children's centres, how we can further integrate health facilities in children's centres. We know a significant burden is adolescents in the care system, so looking at how we can bring the whole piece of traditional social services together in one setting that really targets these problems will have a very positive impact on that going forward. But you're right to provide that sort of challenge to us. A paper's already gone through scrutiny to begin this process, and I look forward to visiting some children's centres in October with Rory and Rod Wilkinson as we look to that piece to how it can hopefully take us from the red and back into the black.
Any other member got anything they wish to add or to as a question to Councillor Head? No? I do think it's obviously the right thing to be doing. I do find it a little bit odd that we set up reserves and then just sort of sit on there when there's been so much, some change, obviously the amount of money we receive and the amount of money that we need to spend. I would have thought this would have been a regular occurrence, perhaps every couple of years, and perhaps it's something we can make sure happens, so we don't get caught on the back foot at some point. We seem to do it on everything else, for instance, parking charges, so we worry about 5 pence here and there, but when we're into millions, we seem to have skipped over it a little bit. Councillor Hill?
I think that one is exceptionally salient, Leader, if only because obviously if you're creating a budget, certainly for such a multi-million-pound organisation which is providing key public services to the general public, it is only proper that you know what you're starting from. If you're setting arbitrary targets which is based on data from 6 years ago, which the world was significantly different, I think you're absolutely right to champion the point that this review should be more regular than what has been, and we certainly have that undertaken.
Excellent, thank you, Councillor Head. With that all said, can I move that recommendations 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 all be noted in accordance with how they're written? Is that agreed? Agreed. Brilliant, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 7, which can be found on page 9 of the main Cabinet report, and that's over to Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. This report shows how we've been measuring and monitoring our progress with a summary of last year's performance. Using key point indicators to manage our performance is extremely important because it helps us deliver and continually improve our services. Over the next few months, I'm instigating a full and thorough review of the KPIs. I want to make sure that we're measuring smartly. We seem to be measuring loads of KPIs, and I want to make sure that they're relevant and that they will provide us with answers to solving problems and aid improvement in the future. Based on that, in the future there'll be no masking of our performance results behind red, green and amber status. We will either be achieving or failing.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Excuse me. Do any members have any questions in relation to this report? Councillor Head?
That probably comes as no surprise as it's a subject that I sadly get quite enthusiastic about. There is an expression, Councillor Stewart, that what gets measured gets done. And I think your approach at reaching out to the community of Thurrock is absolutely right in understanding what they want us to be working on, as well as the statutory stuff as well. But let's be honest with you, we have a customer base out there, a Thurrock consumer, and that's residents, small businesses, but larger businesses. And it's right that we calibrate what we focus on as a council, especially in terms of any spending review that we're soon to instigate, and that those priorities are aligned. The one thing I would ask is, in any customer service strategy, you should always look at your top complaints, if you like. So if there are common themes in the complaint system, I suppose my suggestion would be that we would look at what our top issues are and seek to have performance indicators specifically targeting that. Because by chipping away at the things which are enduring, that's what changes customer service. So perhaps I could just implore on your review to consider adding complaints or the top complaints into that framework, please.
Yep, that's a very good idea, Councillor Head. I'll get that instigated with officers. I want to make sure, therefore, that the top 5 become our main priority, because we need to start being proactive, not reactive.
Thank you, Councillor Holden.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think that the only thing I would add is that we, as part of the review that the portfolio holder is doing, which is very welcome, we need to really nail down social value in our key performance indicators. We've got a number of great schemes, from the Level of Help to looked after to local area coordinators, but we need to make sure we're not just measuring things to ensure that they are working the way they're planned, we're measuring them to actually ensure that they are actually delivering something for the public. It's not good enough just to have a set of KPIs that serve our own metrics. We need to make sure they're actually serving our constituents. So I think, echoing Councillor Hebb's point, what gets measured gets done. We need to make sure we're measuring things that our constituents actually want, not just measuring things that are targets that we know we can meet.
I fully agree with that, which is why we are currently putting a questionnaire together. In the autumn, we'll be doing a survey which is borough-wide for residents. We'll also be asking businesses separately. We'll be asking them not only what they think of the services currently, but the ones that are important to them, so that we make sure we are measuring exactly what is relevant for our customers, our residents.
Anybody else with any questions? No. I can remember back in 2009 we were going to do exactly what you're re-suggesting we do with the customer survey to do exactly this. We had so many KPIs then. It was good that the government of the day decided that we could strip them out. It would just be good to obviously just have us measuring those that we do need to measure. And obviously those that our residents want to see in an open and honest way of reporting them. Some of the KPIs have a fantastic way of being calculated. They start to be open and honest with them and say as it is rather than say as someone dictated 10 or 15 years ago. So it is good to see. The other thing I noticed as we go through some of these that there are brief outlines of how failing indicators, and I'll use just the term failing indicators, those that have not met the mark, are going to improve. Obviously, we need to make sure that is continually monitored, not only as Cabinet, but obviously through the opening and scrutiny process. So our residents do realise we are taking this seriously. I think Councillor Hebb's suggestion of the complaints being a good way to model that. Obviously, if everyone's complaining about it, there's probably a problem there, so let's make sure we address it and move it forward. So in that case, if there's nothing else to add from any other member? No? We'll move to the recommendations as outlined then, and that's to 1.1 to agree for the thorough review of the KPIs, 1.2 to agree the activities for the upcoming year in the corporate plan, and to note the progress of performance against the corporate priorities for 15-16. All those agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah. My apologies for that. Thank you very much. Councillor Stewart. Moving on to item 8, petitions from members of the public. I've not had any petitions from members of the public supplied to me. Moving on to question 9. As was done under the previous administration as well, I feel it's probably more appropriate that the questions be put to the relevant member after they've done their introduction of the report. That seems to certainly worked well when we were that side, as it were. Quite often some of the supplementary questions being answered long before we needed to ask them. Moving on to item 10, which is matters referred to Cabinet for consideration by opening scrutiny. We have none of those either. So we move on to item 11, which is page 51, which is the procurement of disabled adaptation services, which is myself. This report is seeking our approval to go to tender for the contract to provide disabled adaptation in people's own homes. There are 2 lots that will form up this tender. Supply, installation and maintenance of mechanical aids such as ceiling hoists and through floor lifts. And also major adaptations over £1,000 per home that are not part of the Transforming Homes programme. For Lot 1, the current contract expires on the 31st of March 2017, and although that seems somewhat in the future, it's very short when it comes to actually doing these procurements in local government, or indeed anywhere at the moment. For Lot 2, we currently use a range of suppliers that arrange through spot agreements. We want to establish a framework agreement where the council can then commission the work on its own, or under the terms of the Disabled Facilities Grant, an individual can choose how they're going to finance and manage the works using the contractor of the framework agreement. Now this contract will run for a period of 4 years and currently spend about £250,000 per year. Taking this approach will give residents acquiring the service of a much wider range of options and flexibility in the way that can have adaptations delivered. It's a sensible approach, and whilst it won't free up any money, which is obviously something we'd like to see, to add further value into this and more people can get more adaptations, it will stop the scattergun approach where bits are done here, there and everywhere. So are there any questions in relation to this at all, members? No? See? In that case, we'll move to the recommendations, which is 2.1, agreed proposed process for the procurement of work services. Excuse me. Approved delegation of awards to contracts to the corporate director for adults, housing and health, and consultation with portfolio holder in order to expedite the process for this critical provision. Are we happy with both of those recommendations? Agreed or not agreed? Thank you very much. We'll then move on to item 12, which is Thurrock Council Draft Transport Policy, which is Councillor Holden, and that we found at page 63 of the report.
Thank you, Leader. Very pleased to present the report. What the report seeks to do is to bring the school transport policy into line now that we've got a series of updates. Obviously, the main update is the ending of denominational transport, so paying for students on the basis of a faith application. Of course, it's important to state that school transport is primarily the responsibility of the parents. When you have children or you're moving into an area, you do need to consider how you will cater for your child's educational welfare. The two recommendations fall under that. So recommendation 1 seeks to bring the transport policy into line with the ending of denominational transport. Recommendation 2, on page 64, is in regards to the exceptional circumstance policy. The reason that I feel comfortable with our school transport policy being largely in line with the mandatory statutory minimum is because we've got an exceptional circumstance scheme, which means there is built-in flexibility. Officers can judge applications on their merits and the requirements of those families, so we don't need to be overly prescriptive, which could end up with all sorts of loopholes, which could end up with tremendous costs. This way of doing it will save us money, but it will give the council flexibility. But what the second recommendation does is commits this to be a part of the wider work about how we're reviewing means testing. I've already met with Health Watch and Thurrock Lifestyle Solutions to have discussions around across the council to rightfully save money. We're ensuring that means testing, exceptional circumstances used to ensure that we are only spending money on residents who genuinely require help. Every pound spent on discretion in one area is a pound that you put pressure on in a different area. So it's right that we use means testing, it's right we use exceptional circumstance, but we are now going to be doing a piece of work to review how those policies are actually working. We set the means testing, we set the exceptional circumstance, so it's right that we look for a body externally from the council to actually audit how we do that and make recommendations directly to us as the Cabinet about how our policies are actually impacting either vulnerable users or needy users. It's right that if we set the policy, we're not marking our own homework. Just a couple of points I want to flag up. It's always worth noting section 10, areas where the council does not provide transport assistance, for parents to contact the council if they're in any way confused about how the application criteria works. If you're moving into the borough outside the academic year, or you're moving location within the academic year, make sure you're following the council forms very carefully to ensure you don't end up with those problems. Section 16 talks about post-16 transport. I want to thank Ensign Buses for the work they're currently doing with the council. It was a scheme that I supported several years ago under the previous administration. Ensign Buses are making a significant difference for those post-16. I understand that Ensign Buses also did something with one of our members of Parliament the other day, aiding in one of her surgeries, so it's always good to see a local business taking their commitment to the community seriously. In regards to the exceptional circumstance policy, I've already outlined, point 22.2 does outline how even if a child may not fit into the criteria. There are obviously exceptions with children who have statements of special educational need. And 31.2 further expands to that. So even if a child is not entitled to free school transport based on their SEN, the Statement of Educational Needs, the exceptional circumstance policy can actually still be used to satisfy that criteria. So it does actually give an additional layer of support to parents who've got a child with a Statement of Educational Need or disability. So it is a flexible policy. I would just like to flag up a minor change to 53.8. Previously there were sanctions where we would withdraw free school transport for a whole host of reasons. That's been pared back just to instances of violence or abusive behaviour. The principle has to be we support children remaining in schools, especially children with difficult backgrounds, so we want as few sanctions as possible to make sure we are keeping children in school. And finally, on page 106 in the draft application form, it does actually now include a section where the parent can opt to inform either the school and or their local counsellor that they are applying for the exceptional circumstance policy, so either the school or the counsellor can actively be an advocate for that child based on, obviously the school knows a specific child's circumstances. If a child is constantly late because a parent is really struggling to drop one child off at secondary while they've got another in primary, that does allow either the school or the counsellor to act as an advocate to see if there is some flexibility available under the exceptional circumstance policy. So I think that's all I've got to say, Leader, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Holden. Any questions at all from anyone? Councillor Hay.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Howland, for your report. Yeah, I think quite rightly you talked about exceptional circumstances policy, and I think residents will be mindful of the fact we do need to protect the most vulnerable in our society. So I just would appreciate you just reassure residents and cabinet that in terms of children that are in that exceptional circumstances category, we are protecting them in our forward transport policy that's actually enacted through this report tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. I think that obviously one thing this report does is it does end the issue of denominational transport. I know that has caused some concern. It is right that we look to save money in this area, because singling out one group of young people for additional support does deprive the system of money that could be more fairly allocated, because after all children will get a school place. If you choose to send your child to a faith school, obviously that's a level of discretion you are acting on as a parent. But in terms of the exceptional circumstance policy, one thing I'll just read to Councillor Hay, the exceptional circumstance provisions can be used for SEND, Statement of Educational Needs or Disability, pupils that do not fully satisfy the SEN needs assessment. So even where we've got circumstances where a child may not actually hit the criteria, we have stated that there may always be an exception if you apply in the correct way. Obviously that applies to all pupils, not just SEND, but the reason I wanted it put in there specifically about our most vulnerable children is to make the point that this is a flexible policy and that we will seek to aid parents in any areas that we can. So I can give you that assurance.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hay. Councillor.
Thank you, Leader. I would just like to say as well, I was very pleased that Councillor Holden actually put in about it was not just being the school for being an advocate, it was the local councillor as well. And I think that is a definite step forward because, we know our residents and we know our children. As you know, I'm a strong fighter for children and I think that was an excellent idea. So thank you for doing that, Councillor.
Would you like to respond, Councillor Holden?
Yes, simply to say that the reason that we now give parents the option, obviously it doesn't happen automatically, give them the option of notifying the school or notifying their ward counsellor, is because there is a difference between the council and the counsellor. For schools that constantly see if a child is late or not, the schools will often come to their own conclusions about what can we do to possibly help. Obviously we get it on a daily basis, complaints from constituents, so we can act as that advocate, so it is not just a matter of saying to parents, you've got to come to the imposing council and the corporate body will divine in some way whether or not you meet exceptional circumstance. It's about saying that we will actively try and find ways to help you if you generally require help, and I think involving the schools, involving the council is an important way of doing that.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or statements on this report before we move to the unnumbered recommendations? No? In that case, recommendation as outlined on page 63 and then second at the top of page 64, as mentioned, are both unmarked, so to make sure that doesn't happen in the future, but we'll record recommendation 1.1 and 1.2, that Cabinet consider the education transport policies attached and the exceptional circumstances scheme be included in the wider work of elected members to review the means of testing support. Are we all happy and in favour of that?
Agree.
Agree. Very much. We'll move now to item 13 that could be found on page 129, which is for Councillor Tolson, and that's the environmental enforcement report.
Thank you. Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to present this report to Cabinet. It will enable us to strengthen enforcement in our borough. Our residents tell us there is too little litter in our public bins and too much on the floor. The campaign against litter will begin soon and will include publicity regarding fixed penalty notices. Similarly, fly tipping in the borough has greatly increased. It blights the appearance of the borough and our residents want to see an improvement. The message from the Thurrock Conservatives is we want a clean and tidy borough. We've listened to our residents and businesses, and this paper is a step on the way to achieving this.
Thank you, Councillor Solson. Excuse me. Councillor Kent, would you like to come to the chair there and state your question, please?
Is the portfolio holder confident that retrospective fines, as set out in recommendation 1.4, are both possible and lawful?
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. The fine is for the non-production, when asked, of the duty of care document and the waste contract. It's not going back in time, it's when they're not able to produce. And there is a certain amount of days that they're able to do that in. It's either by email, by post or in person.
Thank you, Councillor Solson. Councillor Kent, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, I do. I welcome the move to greater enforcement. Recommendation 1.3 notes that £20,000 has been identified to enhance environmental enforcement resources for the current year. We were told that paragraph 3.18 that an additional £300,000 would create an additional 5 enforcement officers. It would appear that £20,000 therefore is about a third of one enforcement officer. Can the portfolio holder tell us what she expects to achieve with that?
Councillor Solson.
The £20,000 is for the trial period at the end of the summer for enforcement officers.
Thank you, Councillor Tolson, for that. Members, do we have any questions or statements on this at all? Councillor Hall, did you indicate for?
I just simply commend the portfolio holder since we announced clean it, cut it, fill it as the administration's policy, reflecting the conversation we had about KPIs. We need to make sure we are corporately doing things that our constituents want. So it's a challenge for every department to make sure appropriate resources are in place to ensure we can meet clean it, cut it, fill it. It is our corporate priority. The portfolio holder has made sure that money is available for this trial period. She set it out as a zero tolerance policy to ensure that as we clean it and cut it in particular, that we are actually enforcing, so we then bring on the fourth section, which is maintain it. So I commend the portfolio holder on what is an excellent report, and I'm sure once we get the trial period out of the way, we iron out any kinks, we'll be looking forward to going corporately together and making sure the appropriate resources are in place to maintain it after that period.
Here, here.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Any response on that? Councillor Head.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Pauline, for a report which I think, you know, you look at the Cabinet, we are residents of this borough, and you have created a policy which is by residents for residents. Okay, so we represent Thurrock, the 49 members, and we are a Cabinet of 9, and you have taken a message from the doorsteps and brought it to Cabinet. What a show of democracy. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Head. Any other questions before I ask mine? No? The one thing that obviously we had noticed when we knocked on doors, and indeed from posts from across the borough, is the problem we have with, and I'm going to use the general term, private land. That's land that the council doesn't have a responsibility for, be it private, be it an area which we will maintain for a reason, or indeed we just cannot work out who the owner actually is. Well, what are we going to do to address that? Because obviously there's a large amount of land within Thurrock that falls under that, including things like back alleyways.
Well, hopefully the Cabinet will support me on this. I wanted to put an additional recommendation, make it 1.7, that an area that we haven't looked at yet is unregistered land, back alleyways, private platted areas, because we can enforce most places, but that's the last place we're not able to enforce at the moment. So currently, that's what I'm proposing. Are you going to support me on it? And I'd like this paper to be brought for October 16, please.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Do you have a much concise version for that for obviously officers to add? But I think what you're saying is that a report will be brought back for October 16 that will address the issue of littering and fly tipping on private land where we have limited enforcement powers. So if we can add that as 1.7, it is. It was actually shocking during some of the by-elections we had very recently, going to flatted areas where you quite clearly see landlords that spend a lot of money doing up their flats and leaving the old baths and the previous tenants' beds, etc., in the bin areas, just hoping they would be picked up by the council. Well, that's not how it works. We pay for general rubbish, and things like that is quite clearly rubbish they do need to take care of themselves. And as we all know, fly tipping attracts fly tipping, which attracts more fly tipping, and as soon as it starts, unless it's nipped in the bud very quickly, it just mounts. I can certainly remember living in flat accommodation not too far from the council. Everybody in the block was warned that there's a large fine for using the bin sheds for things that are not ordinary daily waste, and perhaps obviously we start having a policy where we can enforce on that and actually start pushing these fines forward. I think obviously it puts the onus back on the owners then to make sure their land is kept clean, and of course gives residents the pride and the respect that not just the bit at the front of the house, but the bit at the back of the house needs to be looked after. So they'll be quite happy to report their neighbours that are using their back alleyways as free skips. It's just not acceptable. And it's also not acceptable that taxpayers have to pick up the expense of cleaning that up. So I certainly look forward to that coming forward in the next few months. Any other statements or questions in relation to this at all? No? Excellent, thank you very much. In that case, I move the recommendations as outlined at 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 4, 5 and 6 as listed within the papers, plus 1.7 that dictated earlier. Are we all in favour of all of those as written and dictated? Agreed. Excellent. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 14, there are some pink papers which is in relation to matters where we would normally exclude the press and public. And in the previous administration, I'm not a lover of pink papers. I think the more that residents know what we're doing, the better. Obviously in this there are some commercially sensitive aspects, so if we need to go into exempt session, I would like members to notify us before we get there. So other than that, we avoid using any of the terms that are on the exempt papers. In that case, moving on to item 14, which is page 139, over to Councillor Head.
Thank you, Leader. So this report, item 14, tender of council insurance and associated services, isn't perhaps quite as sparkly as some of the other stuff we've discussed tonight, but it is important for the fact that the administration has taken the view that we need to have increased resilience to external risks, and we are at a good time to review where we are with it. So, slight bit of history. So Zurich Municipal are our insurance provider. We have a 5-year contract currently, over obviously 5 years, but there's a 3-year piece followed by 2 1-year options, of which the Section 151 officer already has the authority to take the option of using. This paper tonight is about doing our best to secure best value in the interest of the taxpayer. We have the option to go out to tender, and that's what the Section 151 officer has asked of us tonight. I think it demonstrates good value council business. Any pennies in the taxpayer's pocket is always good news to me. And I think it's important for the current provider to know that we are willing to look out at what's out of the market. It's not to compromise any insurance terms and conditions, but merely test the market to see where we are. So the Section 151 officer already has the ability to take the first option out of the 2 years. The recommendation merely is for the Section 151 officer to go to tender if the existing terms of the first year option aren't the best council value by our taxpayers. Sean will revert to Cabinet at the completion of the tendering exercise, where a decision will be presented or be asked of Cabinet to make that decision as to the procurement of that particular contract. That reflects a very long-standing Conservative approach in opposition, and now carrying over into administration, that delegated powers should be restricted as much as possible, and that it's the political leaders that should make the ultimate decisions and be held to account at the ballot box with that. So we'll start as we mean to go on, I think, Chair. So, happy to field questions.
Thank you, Councillor Head. Councillor Kent, would you like to ask your question as outlined?
Is the portfolio holder content that any officer should be given delegated authority to agree to spend of what is currently £1.2 million?
Thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question. I think I was very clear in opposition, and I shall continue that vein in administration. Delegation powers are not the default position that we take in authority. Sean and I have had a very clear conversation. Section 151 officer, this piece of paper in front of us tonight is merely to go to tender. It is not to award nor procure a contract. So in that vein, yes, I am very comfortable.
Councillor Kent, do you have any supplementary?
Yeah, that answer only covers the eventuality of the Section 151 officer not believing that renewal terms presented by the current provider are favourable. If the Section 151 officer believes that the deal that is offered by the current provider is in the best interests of the authority, shouldn't that be brought back to Cabinet for a decision, or at least to be agreed in consultation with group leaders?
Councillor Head.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question, and it is a good question. What I would say is that the Section 151 officer inherited, or not, sorry, he didn't inherit, we inherited the decision of the Section 151 officer already has that ability. So we are merely carrying over a process where, should we identify terms which are more favourable in the market, that we would give Sean permission to go out and try and secure some best value procurement contract. It is merely an inheritance which we are carrying over.
Thank you, Councillor Head. And thank you, Councillor Kent, for your questions this evening. Do any members have questions on this particular report at all? No? obviously, Councillor Heavy is good, as you outlined, you know, we've got to test the market first, let's not just jump on what we've been doing for year in the past. And of course, having that assurance that you know, it will come back to Cabinet, where it needs to come back to Cabinet, and there is an open and transparent decision making in this under this administration. So with that in mind, the recommendation on page 140 that the Cabinet approved delegations to the corporate director of finance and IT to tender the contract for the council's insurance programme. If the renewal terms presented by the current providers are not favourable, are we all in agreement with that? Agreed. Yeah, thank you very much. In that case, we'll now move on to item 15, which is Councillor Hagan, the community asset transfer policy.
Thanks very much, Chair, colleagues. I'm really pleased to be bringing this policy forward tonight. Community asset transfer policy brings together our commitments and responsibilities outlined in earlier policies, plans and practice and recent legislation, and sets out a fair, transparent and consistent application and assessment framework for community asset transfer in Thurrock, and that's a real step forward, I think. It supports identification, transfer and sustainable management of eligible council assets by the voluntary, community and faith sectors if the anticipated social value and financial viability outweigh the potential risks. The policy also provides a structure by which the council can initiate the community asset transfer process following reviews of its assets. So within the policy, an application and assessment process has been designed for council and for community identified opportunities. All community asset transfer nominations need to demonstrate how they will directly benefit local residents and the wider communities of Thurrock, and how their activities and expected outcomes will contribute to the delivery of the community strategy, vision and strategic priorities. And this has been put together jointly with the voluntary, community and faith sectors. It's been through scrutiny. I think it really is a step forward in the right direction. In preparation of the policy, there was some discussion around ensuring we have maximum transparency and democracy with the policy, and procedures and frameworks have been put in place now to make sure that there's democratic involvement, more council involvement, community involvement, all the way through from advertising the opportunities all the way through to decision-making steps. So I think it's a really robust policy, it's transparent, it's democratic, and hopefully it will help communities to liberate some of these assets for their best use in the future. So with that, I commend it to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haig. Any member got any questions in relation to this report or Councillor Coxall?
Yeah, Councillor Haig, can you make sure that this policy is obviously in here, we talk about it, and we talk about advertising it widely. How can you make sure that all community groups across the borough get involved, and how we can make this available to make sure it's just not, when I've seen community transfers before, it's such that my mate knows it, offering there, and it's very insidious, and I'm very pleased that we've put this transparency here, so these community assets are moved and transferred quite openly. Now, and I just want to make sure that the wider community has this opportunity to actually get these assets, so the council is offering these, and how can we move that forward to actually advertise that more widely?
Yeah, thanks so much, Councillor Coxall. I'm glad you asked me that question, because it's something we've thought about a lot really in terms of trying to reach those hard to reach organisations. Opportunities come along, and maybe one body thinks it's best placed to actually run that community asset. There may be others out there that actually do a better job, so it's important that we reach all those communities really, all those individuals who have something to offer. So yeah, we'll be working very closely with officers to make sure these advertised properly, media obviously involved, community forums, obviously social media, all those channels that we can use to make sure that all those that need to know about these opportunities do as they come forward. So it's certainly top of our mind in terms of making sure this policy works. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Coxall, Councillor Haig, any other questions at all? Councillor Holden?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just on the 3.11, I think there's a slight typo. It should be to the relevant cabinet members, but for some reason it delegates authority to me as Cabinet Member for Education, which I don't believe is meant to be the case. So I think it's meant to read relevant cabinet member and not the cabinet member for Finance and Education.
Are you sure you don't want it? That's fine. No, we'll sort that out. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions at all? Councillor Stewart?
Well, actually a question, but I welcome the fact that we are going to engage more with communities, being communities portfolio holder. Can I just kind of mention CBS so that they are included? Because they do have a lot of community-based groups beneath them, over 100, so it would be good if you can make sure they are included.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of the bedrock of this is about being inclusive with everybody that has an opportunity to actually be involved in these assets, so not exclusive. So absolutely, and CBS, as we all know, have a very local role in that, so absolutely, thank you.
Any other questions or statements? No? Okay, thank you for your report, Councillor Hay. Obviously, it is good to see, obviously, after the corrections that Councillor Holden has outlined, but also the councillors are also involved within this. I know it has caused problems in the past where local councillors were not aware of a sale or disposal of an asset, and it's it does stick in their throat, indeed the community's throat, and they feel they've not had a voice or a chance. And I can think of a number of, well, at least 5 or 6 conversations I've had with people who have said, I wish we'd known that was up for sale, or wish we knew we could have taken that on, or we could do a better job for that, for less. And this is the kind of thing, residents are quite open and are willing to come forward and when I say help out, but obviously to do something not only for their community but for themselves. We should be making sure we're doing everything we can to support that. And I think obviously making sure everyone knows what is available and being open and transparent is going to make that happen a lot more often and hopefully a lot faster than it has been in the past. So with that in mind, we'll move the recommendations as marked out on page 145 at 1.1, 1.2 and 1.3 to acknowledge the work of community, community assets and management partnerships supported in locality, approve the decision making process set out in the community asset transfer policy and approve and adopt the community asset transfer policy. Are we happy to acknowledge 1.1 and approve 1.2, 1.3?
Agreed.
Excellent, thank you very much. And moving on to item 16, which is the local air policy, which falls as part fall under Councillor Tolson in her role of portfolio for the environment, and that's on page 203. Councillor Tolson.
Thank you. Just by way of introduction, the Council's Environment Protection Team monitor air quality at key points around the area. During the course of this monitoring, areas where the amount of these pollutants are expected to become higher than average are mapped, so that measures to manage these levels down can be considered. In the case of the 2 areas identified in the report where the nitrogen dioxide are predicted to become higher and the level set as the objective for the air quality, we are requesting the declaration of an air quality monitoring areas. The declaration of these areas will require officers in highways and transportation to devise and implement an action plan designed to prevent the level of nitrogen dioxide getting too high. The action plan will involve appropriate traffic management activity designed to reduce the contribution of traffic in the designated areas to reduce air quality.
Thank you, Councillor Tolson. Any questions or statements in relation to this report? No? No, obviously, while slightly different, I can remember actually my first ever question as a member of the public in the way that obviously Mr. Perry asked questions at full council still was in relation to air quality, although it wasn't in relation directly to motor vehicle pollution, it was in relation to the poor air quality in Tilbury. It's good that we are still taking this very seriously. We need to measure before we can put in action plans and see, we need to know what the problem is before we can fix it. With that in mind, do we all agree with the recommendations as marked out on page 203 and 204, which is approved declarations of 2 new air quality management areas, Avenue High Street, Ship Lane and Berkeley Bypass, and to note that the action plan proposed for these proposals are under development and will be brought back to Cabinet for approval in September. Are we all agree with those?
Agreed.
Excellent, thank you very much. Obviously with item 17 relating to the exempt items which we covered under item 14. That concludes the meeting this evening. Apologies, that looks like 7:55.